I wasn't really involved in much during college. My grades weren't great. I wasn't part of any group or frat. I didn't have a girlfriend, and I mostly just kept to myself. I wasn't exactly a happy kid back then. Not that I'm complaining though, things are different now. I ended up meeting someone later in life who's been incredibly loyal to me, and we've built a good life together. Back in college though, I wasn't part of any frat, so the usual campus parties were kind of out of reach for me. I still wanted to go out and have fun though, like anyone would. My friends Nolan and Eric were in a similar situation. We mostly just spent our weekends hanging around Eric's dorm, killing time. But whenever there was a chance to go to a party, we always took it. Most of the ones we ended up at weren't even official school or frat parties. Once we even drove over an hour just to attend one. We were honestly pretty desperate for anything going on. One Friday, Nolan texted the group chat saying the girl he had been talking to knew about a party not too far away. I wasn't really sold on it at first. Eric even joked that it sounded like one of those weird underground emo or metal-type gatherings, which I kind of agreed with. Nolan insisted it was normal, though, and kept pushing that we should go. We didn't really have anything else going on, so eventually we agreed. Eric got his brother Mark to drive us. Mark didn't drink, so he was fine being our designated driver. Everything was set. On the way there, Nolan started getting annoyed about the girl he was talking to. He said she hadn't replied to him in hours, which honestly didn't seem that unusual. Then he started saying he wasn't even sure about going anymore. It felt a bit dramatic, but we were already too far in the drive to turn back. We told him to just forget it and not ruin the night. A few minutes later, Nolan said the girl's profile had completely disappeared from his phone. We told him straight up that he was probably blocked, and she likely went with someone else to the party. He didn't say much after that and just stayed quiet for the rest of the drive. When we finally arrived, the house was huge, way bigger than anything else around it. Nolan still didn't want to go in right away and said he needed a buzz first to forget everything. So Eric and I didn't argue, and we told Mark to park a bit farther down the road so we could drink outside the car first. We opened a few beers and just sat there watching people heading into the house. Once Nolan felt ready, all four of us made our way over. The moment we stepped inside, something felt off. All the lights were fully on. No dim lighting, no party mood, just bright overhead lights everywhere. The people inside were also dressed way too neatly, almost like it was some kind of formal gathering instead of a college party. Even the music didn't fit. It wasn't anything like normal party music. It was slow, instrumental, almost eerie in a way that was hard to describe. We all just looked at each other trying to figure out what was going on. Nolan didn't know anything either, so we started walking through the place. There was alcohol around, so we helped ourselves. A few minutes in, I started noticing something strange. People kept looking at me, then quickly looking away like they didn't want to be caught. It started happening enough that I even wondered if something was wrong with my face or my clothes. Eric eventually said he was going to sit in the car for a bit and smoke. We didn't think much of it. Not long after he left, a group of 3 girls came over to us. They weren't very confident, which made it even more unusual that they were the ones approaching. They started flirting almost immediately, not even subtly. Then they mentioned something about an entry fee, which I thought was a joke at first until I realized they were serious. They were holding a bottle of tequila. We didn't really think it through and ended up drinking from it. After that, we all kind of stayed together, talking, drinking, even dancing a bit. It was actually going better than expected. At one point, I noticed a strange mark on one of the girls' wrists. It was a thin green line, almost like it had been drawn on with a marker. It was small, but once I saw it, I couldn't ignore it. I almost asked about it, but decided not to make it weird. I just let it go. Later, I saw Eric and the girl he was with start heading upstairs. Not long after, Nolan also started walking up with his girl. I stayed behind, but I was starting to feel uneasy. I told the girl I was with that I needed to use the bathroom. The bathroom was already taken, so I stood outside waiting. When it finally opened, a young guy stepped out. I moved forward to go in, and we bumped shoulders slightly. I expected him to just keep walking, but he didn't. He stopped and just stared at me, not saying anything, just looking at me like he was trying to figure me out. That's when I saw it. The same green line on his wrist. I asked him what his problem was without thinking too much. He smirked a little and said, "Who invited you?" I told him Nolan's girl, the one he had been talking to. That seemed to change something in his expression. He repeated her name quietly, then looked around the party and said, "Do you even see her here?" I didn't answer. I just walked past him into the bathroom and closed the door. But now I couldn't stop thinking about that mark. When I came back out, I started paying attention to people more closely. I wasn't even looking at faces anymore, just wrists. That's when I saw it again. Another person with the same green line. Then another. Most people didn't have it, but enough did that it made me uneasy in a way I couldn't ignore. I went looking for my friends. Eventually, I found Nolan and Eric coming down the stairs. I pulled them into a hallway and told them we needed to leave. I tried explaining what I saw, but they just laughed it off and said I was overthinking things. Then Nolan turned his wrist slightly. There was a red line on it. I actually shouted without meaning to, which made both of them pause. I checked Eric next, and he had the same mark, also red. Nolan said it was probably makeup or something stupid like that, but Eric started to look unsure. I told them again we needed to leave right now. Nolan still refused. He said he wanted to meet the girl again upstairs. Just then, someone walked past us. He glanced at all three of us slowly, and I saw it again. The green line on his wrist. That was it. Eric and I immediately headed for the exit, and Nolan followed behind after a moment. It felt like people were watching us leave, but nobody stopped us. We got back to Mark's car and told him to drive. As we left, Nolan and Eric started getting messages from those girls asking why we left. The strange part was, those messages came almost immediately, like they already knew. We blocked them. Even now, I still don't really know what that place was, or what those marks meant. But I do know one thing. Leaving when we did was the only choice that made sense. I had just started my graduate program in computer science a few months ago. At that point, things were actually going fine overall. My classes were manageable, I had started getting used to the workload, and I had even made a couple of friends here and there. I was living a little off campus in an apartment I found pretty quickly. The rent was decent, but the landlord always felt a bit sketchy. Not dangerous, just the kind of guy you don't fully trust for no real reason. The area itself wasn't great either. It wasn't the safest part of town, but I didn't really care that much. I had a car, I could handle myself, and I was mostly just focused on getting my degree done. Life was honestly a bit boring, but I didn't mind it. I wasn't there for anything exciting anyway. Things stayed like that until the day my backpack got stolen. I'd left it on a table in one of the lecture halls while I stepped out to use the bathroom. It wasn't a planned thing, just something I didn't think twice about. But when I came back, it was gone. Inside, it was my wallet, my apartment keys, and my laptop. At first, it just felt like bad luck, more annoying than anything else. I had to cancel all my cards, report my keys missing, deal with replacements, and start figuring out how I was going to replace my laptop. It turned into a whole process, but I treated it like something that just happens in life. It wasn't until a few days later that I realized it was worse than I thought. One evening I came back to my apartment and saw something slipped under the door. It was a folded note. At first I assumed it was something from my landlord, maybe a reminder or some small notice, but when I opened it there were only 3 words written on it. I see you. No name. No explanation. That's when it hit me. Whoever had stolen my backpack must have gone through my laptop, figured out my address, and now knew exactly where I lived. But then another thought came in that felt even worse. They still had my apartment keys. I remember just standing there for a moment, not immediately going inside. Just staring at the door like it didn't feel the same anymore. Then I finally went in and locked everything properly, double-checking the deadbolt. After that, things didn't stay normal. Over the next few days, more notes started showing up under my door. Always handwritten, always short. Things like "I know what you did" or "watch yourself." It started messing with my head more than I expected. I hadn't done anything wrong that I could think of, but the idea that someone had my laptop meant they could have seen anything. I didn't really know what to do about it. Going to the police didn't feel like it would change anything, so I kept it to myself and hoped it would stop on its own. One night I was getting ready for bed when I noticed something outside my window. For a split second, it looked like a flash, like a camera going off. I quickly pulled the blinds down, but when I checked again, there was nothing there. Just darkness. After that, small things inside the apartment started feeling off. At first it was little stuff. My shoes not where I left them. My jacket slightly moved. Things I could almost convince myself I was imagining. But then one day I came home and it wasn't like that anymore. My bed sheets were stripped off. My drawers were pulled open. My books were thrown across the floor. The whole place looked like someone had gone through everything. That's when I called the police. They came and checked everything, but there was no forced entry and nothing obvious stolen, so there wasn't much they could do. After that, I went straight to my landlord and told him I needed the locks changed immediately. He said it would take a couple of days to get someone out. I kept telling him it wasn't something I could wait on, but he didn't treat it like urgent. Eventually, he just stopped replying. That was when it really started to sink in. I barely slept that night, even with the deadbolt locked. I kept thinking about the possibility that someone might still have a copy of my keys, or could just walk in whenever they wanted. I even thought about changing the locks myself, but I wasn't sure how to do it without making things worse or damaging the door. The next morning, I didn't go to class. I just stayed inside. Right now, I'm still here writing this. I keep thinking whoever is behind this already knows my schedule. Maybe I'll hide somewhere and get the jump on them if they try to enter while I'm supposed to be at class. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll give an update when I can. Just been trying to get back into a normal routine again. Classes, assignments, just the usual stuff you fall back into when you don't really feel like thinking about anything else. I was studying at Temple University and living in a small apartment not far from campus. It wasn't anything special, but it worked for me. The building was older, so you could hear a lot through the walls and windows. Hallway footsteps, doors closing, people coming in late at night. I never really cared about it before. Things had already been a bit off in my life around that time. I had recently ended things with my boyfriend Adrian. It wasn't some big dramatic breakup. It just slowly fell apart over time until there wasn't really anything left to fix. We stopped talking, I blocked him, and I just tried to move on. At first, everything felt normal enough again. But then I started noticing things at night. It would usually be when I was already in bed, just about to fall asleep. I'd hear movement outside, not loud enough to clearly identify, but enough to make me pause. Light shuffling, sometimes what sounded like footsteps right outside the building near my window. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just my mind overthinking things after everything that had happened recently. Adrian wasn't the type of person I thought would do anything strange anyway, so I didn't really connect it to anything serious at first. During the day, I had enough going on to distract me from it. I was working on a group project that counted for a big part of one of my classes. I was responsible for putting everything together and sending the final file to the professor. I spent most of the night finishing it, fixing small details, checking everything twice. Once I was satisfied, I emailed it just before midnight and went to sleep not long after. The next day in class, we were supposed to present it. When the professor opened my email and loaded the file, I remember feeling a bit relieved, like it was finally done and out of my hands. The room was quiet while it started playing, and then everything went wrong. The video that played wasn't ours. It was a low-quality recording of someone wearing a scream mask. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake, but then the person started speaking. They were saying things about me, about the professor, about random things that didn't make sense, but the tone was aggressive and disturbing. The longer it played, the more the room shifted. I could feel it. People looking over. The professor eventually stopped it, but by then it was already too late. I couldn't even react properly. I just sat there frozen, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then I got up and left the room. I don't really remember walking out properly, just the feeling of everyone watching me as I left. After that, I went straight to speak to my professor. I kept telling him I didn't send that video, that something had to be wrong. I even showed him the original file on my laptop. That's when he told me something that made it worse. He said 2 emails had been sent. One had the correct project. The other one came later with the video attached. That meant my email had been accessed by someone else. It took a lot of back and forth with the university after that, but eventually they accepted it wasn't my fault. Still, the damage was already done. Around the same time, I started noticing something else. I got logged out of my Snapchat randomly one morning, which only happens when someone logs in from another device. That's when I started feeling like this wasn't just random anymore. I called the police and explained everything. Even Adrian got questioned, and they confirmed he wasn't behind it. But he did admit something else. After the breakup, he had posted my personal information on an online forum. He said it wasn't meant to cause harm, just frustration. But my passwords weren't strong, and I used the same ones across different accounts. That's when things started connecting in my head in a way I didn't like. For a while after that, nothing happened. I thought maybe it was over. But then one day I got a Snapchat request from someone I didn't recognize. I added them back without thinking much, and almost immediately they started sending me pictures of me. Some of them were clearly taken without me knowing. I blocked the account right away, but after that, it didn't stop. More accounts started adding me over the next few days. I stopped accepting them completely, but they kept coming anyway. At that point, it was obvious it was the same person, and I still don't know who it is. The police said there wasn't enough to trace it properly, and there wasn't much they could do unless something more direct happened. Sometimes I still think about it, like they know more about my life than they should, like they're closer than I ever realized, and I just hope at some point they move on.